Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. I am your host, Dr. Gabe Roberts, psychosomatic physician and the subconscious healer. Today, let's continue this endeavor, kind of unplugging and understanding ourselves with more depth, understanding what things kind of govern us, and understanding the deeper part of ourselves a little bit more. We have talked about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, and let's do just a brief review of some of the traits and attributes of these two parts of us, because these are the things that govern everything about our lives, our behaviors, our results, and our happiness, our health, our wealth, our overall status, our emotional well-being. If we're going to understand ourselves better, we have to understand the governing part of us, the part that does the work, the part that's responsible for all of that. So, just for a quick review, we've talked about some of these, but the conscious mind is the part we're aware of. That's the part that generates the voice we hear in our head, the inner dialogue. It's the rational, analytical mind. It's the part of us that thinks and judges. And we compare it to a character, Spock, from the Star Trek series. That is a great demonstration of just what the conscious mind is. Very, very incredible decision making power. And that's what Spock has. These superb logical explanations for virtually any kind of situation or problem that they might be facing. He's the one that comes up with the superb logical explanation, the incredible decision making power, the ability to judge and rationalize things for virtually anything. But if you watch his character, you'll notice that it doesn't take long before you see he's missing something, and he's missing heart. He's missing emotion. That's a great explanation for the conscious mind. No emotion, just the logical, rational part of ourselves. The conscious mind is also the lying rational mind. So it lies to us. And it doesn't do this for malevolent purposes or some kind of devious way. It's just doing that because that's its whole job. The conscious mind comes from a prefrontal part of our neocortex, the newest part of our brain that makes us human. And the neocortex, the conscious part of us, is like the walnut. It's like the walnut shaped brain on the top part of the brain. And the very, very front of that is where our conscious, rational, lying mind uh, basically, uh, you know, um, lives, I guess you could say, for a better word. And it's a lying rational mind because its job is to create stories and rationales for why things are the way they are, because people sometimes need that. Sometimes they need to have some kind of answer for what's going on. They need a framework that they can understand to make sense of this world of complex um, situations. Okay. This universe operates on such a complexity. There's no way our conscious mind could understand all of that. So what we do is we rationalize it. We have stories for ourselves that make sense, and you can pick what story that you want to go along with. We each have our own perceptions, but that's one of the jobs of the conscious mind. It also lies in ways so you feel more accepted by a society of your peers rather than what you really think, what you really feel deep down. Now, there's some problems to that as we will cover in probably a later podcast, but it's the rational lying mind. And how we see this clinically is whenever I have a client come to me for something, maybe a woman who comes to me and says, I had a severely horrible divorce. I had a past husband, awful, lots of abuse. And since then I've moved on my own. I have my own place. I've not, had any interactions with this man for a year, but yet his memories still torment me. His memories still torment me. I'm still fearful of this man. I'm thinking every day when I get home, he's going to be in my apartment. He broke in or something, right? So I ask her mind to kind of relax And I ask her subconscious to take us to the key event that has everything to do with this feeling. Okay. Not the image that she's seeing, not the emotional turmoil that her uh, former spouse brings her, but the feeling behind it. Because the feeling is the deepest, most uh, primal part of us that opens a portal for us to get to the root of this. So, everything in our human experience, every single behavior a person displays is created and responding to a feeling in their body, a feeling they want more of or a feeling they want less of, not the emotions. Even though the emotional turmoil gets all of the attention, I've known for years clinically, if you work on emotions on a person, you work on clearing out some of the emotions they may be having, shame or guilt or fear or something like that, you best bet those emotions will come back because it's not the emotion that's the problem, it's the feeling. It's not the limbic system, the emotional brain, it's the reptile brain, the paleocortex that is not a brain capable of using emotions, is capable of using feelings only, sensations. So I asked this woman to take us back to the very first feeling she has that comes up when she thinks about her ex-husband. And next thing I know, she's 6 months old. And what's coming out of her mouth has nothing to do with any kind of divorce or ex husband or anything related to what she thought it was. When we cleared it up there, when we had her change the perception completely in that 6 month version of her, that version of herself that's 6 months old, when she opened her eyes, I asked her to think about her ex husband. I asked her to bring back any emotions or feelings she had in regard to her horrible divorce. And she was shocked that it no longer bothered her. Thinking of him, imagining him in her apartment, all these things no longer had any emotional charge. The fear of him was completely gone. All the emotional cascade, the turmoil that this whole divorce and their relationship had for years was completely gone. Why? Because it had nothing to do with her marriage. It had everything to do with a perception she learned at 6 months of age. So that's why it's the lying rational mind. She was convinced it had to do with her husband or her ex husband, rather. And that's what happens many times. So the conscious mind is the lying rational mind. It's the least informed, last to know, and the weakest part of us. It's the part of us that where we harbor all our willpower, and willpower does not get things done. So, willpower, there's a finite amount of willpower. It's dependent on our quality of sleep and our blood sugar. And if we have a big stressful event and we in our day and we have to have exert emotional control, we have to like maintain ourselves emotionally, we will burn up units of willpower very quickly. And once that's burned up, we tend to kind of go back to old habits and old ways of being, whereas we are trying to use willpower to control that and prevent that from happening. Let's say you have a chocolate cake in your house, in your refrigerator, and you're using willpower to not eat that chocolate cake. You know, it's in your fridge, it looks good, but you know, eating that cake right before you go to bed is a bad idea. So you are using willpower not to do it. Well, let's say you go to work, you have a stressful day, you didn't get the best night's sleep, you have a very stressful day, there's a meeting, your boss is breathing on the back of your neck. By the time you get home, you'll notice that you just can't control it. Next thing you know, you're face deep into that chocolate cake. Why? Because your willpower was inadequate for governing your behavior, and the units of willpower were depleted by your stressful day and the lack of sleep, things like that. Your blood sugar levels, all of those contribute to how much willpower you have. And willpower is not the thing, it's not the answer that we've kind of been led to believe. So, the conscious mind also, other than harboring willpower, is very temporary memory with a very, very small amount. So it's temporary memory and it has a very small amount of that. So oftentimes, if we're, think about this, your conscious mind is what you can think of, your subconscious mind is residing in your body as behaviors actions, sensations, and feelings. So whenever I say your conscious mind has a small amount of memory compared to the subconscious, think about a time when you're trying to give someone directions and it's a route you've driven many times and you know it inside and out. You could wake up in the middle of the night and make that route, but you're trying to explain to someone how to do it. With your conscious mind, you suddenly notice you don't know the name of the roads. You just know the familiar landmarks. You don't know what turn it is, but you would know if you were there, even if you weren't thinking about it, right? The same thing happens if you're trying to open a padlock with a combination. You can't consciously remember the combination. You're sitting there, oh no, I forgot. What is it? If you just relax and let your mind start your take over, your subconscious take over, and your hand starts spinning the dial on its own without you thinking about it, suddenly your fingers are going right to the numbers, and boom, you unlock it. So that's kind of an example of how your conscious mind is very weak and has a very small amount of memory. It's the temporary memory. Now let's look at the subconscious mind. It has two powerful characteristics that are very important to remember. It's the single most powerful goal achieving agency known to man. It cannot judge a single decision put in it or a single suggestion that's placed into it. So it's the most powerful goal achieving agency known to man, and it cannot judge anything placed into it. It's like a mold, it's like fertile soil. It'll grow whatever you put into it. And it's there where these most powerful perceptions are lying, are stored. The perceptions we have are and the infrastructure of this that becomes our subconscious mind are put into place and solidified between conception and the age of 5. So the subconscious mind is also the imaginative mind. It's where our imagination mind, and it's more than just creativity. It's our perception of the world around us. The perception is how we structure the patterns of every thought, every memory, every discernment, every discrimination, every daydream, and every trauma is right here. It's structured through a holographic imprint and structurally built this way and stored within our subconscious mind, which is more like a cluster of grapes. So every time you have a certain experience with something, it's like one more grape gets added to the bunch, and your subconscious mind stores perceptions, memories, experiences by what they have in common, and they're grouped together. If you can picture like a big grapevine with vast amounts of trees filled with grapes, that's how it is. And it's recorded everything that's ever happened to you since the moment of conception on. And the most fundamental of these grapes, we'll say, these perceptions, the most foundational and defining ones were the ones between conception and 5 years old, particularly the time in the womb. That is a time that we really absorb the most. We have great big juicy grapes formed while we're in the womb. So these things that happens to us, these perceptions we build, like adding grapes to a grapevine, is what holds us back in life. Whenever we ask the question, what is holding us back from doing the things we want to do, from getting the relationship we want, getting the career we want, starting the business we want, going on the vacation we want, earning the income, healing from some kind of illness, whatever it is, what holds us back? It's these feelings that we have, not the emotional cascade and not the story that our mind is telling us. Remember, by the time you have a story telling you why things are messed up or why you are the way you are in your conscious mind, it's so watered down and diluted and completely distorted that it is far from the actual truth. Think back to the female patient I described. So it's the feelings that we have that we're enough or who we really are, um, how we feel about ourselves. And there's kind of two things that hold us back in life. One of them is, uh, one of them is going to be, and there's these two reasons, and they almost seem mutually exclusive, but at some level, they're actually poles to one another. You know, they're like a spectrum. One of those of course, is imprinted in us and becomes a huge perception that we carry. And I could just summarize it in one word: fear. Fear. And that is the fear is the enemy of our growth. Fears and it could be fear of success, fear of change, fear of what will happen to me, fear of what will happen to the people that I've become comfortable with in my life, what will happen to my family if I do something different, what if they don't approve. All of these can be governed by one thing I would call fear. Now, fear is something natural in us. We know it's part of us. We know we have receptors in our brain that are just for that. We should all be afraid of a rattlesnake, for instance. We should all be afraid of a poisonous spider. We should all be afraid of falling from great distance, things like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a perception like a grape on a grapevine that gets built and proliferated through life experiences and gets so large that it suddenly skews everything about ourselves and about our ability to change and about our ability to grow and to evolve into something better. That's the fear I'm getting at. So, uh, and the other one besides fear is again comfort. Okay. We reach a point in our life where we're just okay. We're okay with what we know. And we know there's more. We know there's things we oftentimes tell ourselves a lying rationalization, a story in our head. Well, things could be worse, so I can be happy with that. It could be a lot worse, so I'm going to be happy with where I'm at. We become very comfortable, and that leads to a complacency. Everything goes from a need to have, so to speak, that drives this fire in us that impels us to take action, to uh, well, it's just nice with what I have, so I guess that's good enough. Um, I don't know. I'll have to think about it. I'll have to figure it out. I'll have to see if it's worth it. All these are by the time we have any of those things come up to our mind of I'll have to think about it. I'll have to figure it out. I'll have to see if it's worth it. I'll have to think about it for a moment. What we're really saying when we say these kind of things in our head is from, well, it'd be nice to have, to we tend to lapse from saying, I deserve it, this suddenly I don't deserve it. And that is a very subtle shift that our subconscious mind plays in us because our subconscious mind, our neurology, wants us to be safe. Okay. It just wants us to be safe. And anything outside of comfort, this comfort zone, anything outside of the safe feeling, anything outside of that that's new, even if it could drastically improve our life, isn't interpreted as safe. And so what happens is we just kind of stay where we're at. It just makes us kind of drone along, just kind of maintain the same thing, being in the relationships we don't like, being in the job we don't like, doing the things we don't like, but we just kind of drone along with it because it's comfortable. And we didn't come here as conscious beings on Earth school to just drone along. Okay. We came here to actualize. We came here to evolve. We came here to do our soul's calling and to be our highest versions of ourself, to fulfill our soul's desire. What's your soul desire? Oh, simple. Every one of us has an urge inside of us to do something. We have a dream, whether it's to write a book, whether it's to take action and create your own business, whether it's to find that perfect relationship, whether it's to obtain great wealth, whatever it is, every one of us has a desire within us. Maybe it's to be the best baker of a particular kind of pie. I mean, we all have our own individual, unique urge that comes up within us. That's our soul's desire, something that would bring us joy. You could say it's your dream, right? And as that comes up, it's the fear of I don't deserve it, or I'm not good enough, or things aren't going to work out, or my family's not going to like it, or I don't know if I can do that. All these things, it's the fear and the comfort of, well, things are okay the way they are, that keeps us from fulfilling our soul's desire. That fear keeps us from taking actions. But a lot of times, that fear of loss or fear of not taking an action actually kind of gets us in the game, which is why we tend to process fear and related emotions on a neurological level much stronger than positive ones. We're actually more drawn to the negative feelings and negative emotions than we are positive ones. They did an experiment where a person goes into a cafe, like a tea cafe, and all the waitresses and the people working in the restaurant, the cooks, everyone are all actors, and they have a person walk in and they find 20 euros on the ground. Okay. Um, what they did from measuring the neurological response to this was when this person finds 20 euros on the ground, it gives them 1 unit of pleasure. 1 unit of pleasure. Now, when the person goes in and let's say they had 20 euros at home, they had it on their dresser drawer, and they knew they had it. They've had it there for weeks, and they go into this tea bar and they put that 20 euros in their pocket when they left, and they get there and they can't find it. They've lost it. They go back in their car, they're looking in the door, they're looking in all their pockets, and they can't find that money they had lost. They actually gain 6 units of pain. So we are neurologically wired to give much more higher priority to negative encounters than positive ones. This means for us to be positive, for us to be happy, for us to be healthy, we have to understand we're already at a deficit. So we have to work every day thinking about things, training our mind to look at the positive and know that we're already at a deficit just at baseline. So that is something we all should be aware of to and that's going to give us the ability to counteract this because it's kind of from an evolutionary perspective. It gets us off of our bottoms, taking action when we see things happening. The leaves changing outside, it's starting to turn change of season. That makes people get busy getting prepared for winter, that kind of thing. If it didn't create discomfort in us, we probably wouldn't give it the attention it needs. So just know we are naturally wired to give much more attention to negative related emotions than positive ones. And we see this in healthcare too. Okay. We see this in healthcare. Let's say a person on a pain scale of 0 to 10, and they're like a 20 or 25, and they go into a doctor or they have a stomach flu, they've got really bad strep throat, and they're just miserable. They go to a doctor and they get prescribed antibiotics. And the doctor says, okay, you got to take this every single day for the next 30 days if you want this disease or this condition to go away. But what happens is they go home, and for the first 10 to 12 days, they take the medicine religiously. If they went to a chiropractor for back pain, they'll do the exercises regularly and religiously. Um, if they go to an acupuncturist or an herbologist, they're going to follow the directions and take the stuff until the discomfort they have goes away, until that strep throat goes away. Doctor gives you 30 days worth of antibiotics. Are you going to take all 30 days? Chances are you're not. Most people don't. They take it until that discomfort they have goes away and they reach a tolerable level. And that's just below the threshold of where it was that bothers them. And they tend to stop. They tend to not do anymore. And this doesn't mean they're done. This doesn't mean that the problem is solved. But people tend to stop because they reached a point where suddenly they're comfortable. They can tolerate it. And they no longer have any enthusiasm to finish the problem and completely resolve it. So, this is what happens to us in life. We reach a certain level and we're okay with this. And it's has to do with a set point in our self-image or our identity. Okay. And remember, our self-image is the way we view ourself that's solidified between the ages of 0 to 5 years old. And anything outside of that self-image, we are not going to resonate with, and therefore we're not going to maintain that. We're only going to stay with what's comfortable and what's in harmony with those early experiences. Okay. Anything outside of that self image will be reflected to us either through comfort or fear. So anything we get outside of that, we're not comfortable. There's going to be fear that comes up. There's going to be uncomfortable feelings, and we're going to go right back into that that bandwidth of where the self-image resonates. That's exactly why people can win the lottery. Let's say they made $50,000 a year and they won $5 million in the lottery. Do they keep that $5 million the rest of their year? I'm sorry, the rest of their life? No, within 90%, with 90% of people within the first 3 years have lost it all. And some of them are bankrupt afterwards. So, how did all that money suddenly destroy their life? Because it went way out of the range of what their self image was. It went way out of the range of the comfort, and there was fear. No, they don't have to know that. Remember, they're thinking from a logical, rational, conscious mind, not the self image, which is completely below the threshold of awareness. But that's exactly why people that win the lottery are broke. 90% of the time, they're broke within, 3 to 5 years. It's the same thing with pro athletes. Pro athletes um, work, they become, stars. They make millions of dollars while they're playing. A few years after their last game, a majority of them are broke. A tremendous amount of them are broke. Why is that? It's their fear and the comfort that does not match with that self image. And that's where everything comes from. So we have to understand that these things reflect through us through fear. And we are typically afraid to go further, or afraid if we try to reach for more. If we try to do more, we'll lose what we have, and we reach a point where we're comfortable. So, you know how the old saying goes, comfortable, the comfort zone is a wonderful place to be, but nothing ever grows there. So that's exactly it. The comfort zone is a wonderful place to be, but nothing grows there. Even if you suddenly have a wonderful opportunity, a job, if suddenly let's say you got lucky and you had a job come your way, or a relationship come your way that is not in harmony with your subconscious mind. You got lucky and you got pinpointed in a job that maybe you lied about on the application and you got it. And suddenly you go from $50,000 to $150,000 a year, and you've done no self growing, you've done no work on your self image. You will find a way to sabotage it, guaranteed every time. Not intentionally, not on purpose, but it's because it doesn't match you. Same with a relationship. A woman or a man could be dating the same person with a different face, the same personality with a different face, and suddenly they meet someone who is higher resonance to them, has a completely different evolved self-image. And their friends and their peers are like, wow, you really did good. You're really good. That's a really good guy. If it's a girl, that's a really good guy. He's going to treat you really well, and he's got a lot going for him. And they're telling her all this. Do those relationships last? No, not typically. What happens? The relationship goes sour, and next thing you know, she or he is dating someone just like the people before. It's the exact same thing. We are vibrational beings, non physical beings. And if we don't change the deep inner side of ourselves, the things outside are going to find a way to match that. Just life has strange ways. Another way of thinking it is, if your income is dependent on your ability to self grow. And if your income takes a lucky jump and you don't grow to match it, sure enough, it'll come back where you are. And that's just the way this world works. And that's the place that governs everything. So the point is, we didn't come here to be comfortable, believe it or not. That's actually where our spirit has emanated from. Our spirit was once at a place where it had everything it need. Why did we come to Earth? Why are we born on Earth? This what's commonly referred to as Earth Trauma School. Okay, Trauma School Earth. We came here to experience the opportunity to create and to achieve. We came here to be more. We came here to grow. Earth is called trauma school Earth because this place where we're at in this body, we move through this world, and it's like we're going through school for our spirit to grow. So think of Earth as a school for us, designed to teach us things we could not learn any other way. We could not learn it any other way other than being born and going through this life on Earth. So you have to think of it that way. There's a part of us that's never born and a part of us that never dies. And that's the part that is our true essence. Everything we encounter, every experience, every hardship or trauma has things to teach us. The question is, are we learning those lessons? When we do not look for those lessons, maybe because we're afraid to question things as much, it's uncomfortable. We just don't want to go there. Our curiosity that we had as a child growing to an adult, perhaps from our traumas, has went away, and we just don't see things from certain perspectives. Whenever we, whenever we aren't asking those questions, we are going to relive those until we have those experiences. That's why oftentimes when we have family members or friends or we know people that um, just aren't growing, they're not doing things to try to make themselves better. They're just kind of subtle, comfortable watching the news every day, stressing about this, complaining about that, no interest in getting better. Well, their soul is crying out and they're ignoring that. So the best way to think about that is everyone's going to heal. Everyone heals, but it may not be on our timeline, and it may not be of this lifetime. You're not learning the lessons your soul's here to get. Well, you're probably going to go through earth school trauma again in some way, somehow, some shape or form. If we tend to always see the wrong in life, doom and gloom, just how awful this place is, and man, I know people that get so bent out of shape on the government and how the government's out to get us, poisoning our food, poisoning our minds, spraying our skies, and all this stuff. Yes, I understand. I'm not naive about this, and I'm not saying we should be naive about these things. But we are reality creators ourselves. We have all the traits and attributes of the universal creator in our bodies, in our mind. And the more you focus on doom and gloom, the more that becomes your reality. Wherever you put your attention is going to grow. You want to be selective about what you develop feelings for, be selective on what you dwell on, be highly selective about what you get emotionally involved in. Otherwise, you're just going to create more of the same. So, fear and comfort are the things that keep us from evolving. They keep us feeling safe. But that feeling of safety is an illusion. Okay. And like Jim Rohn once said, it's all risky. It's all risky. The minute you were born, it became risky. And if you think trying in life, trying to do more, trying to be more, trying to achieve more, if you think trying is too risky, wait till they hand you the bill for not trying. So, what is true is if you're not growing, you are definitely going the other way. If you're not growing, you're not evolving. You may not realize it. You may even feel comfortable in that comfort zone, but rest assured you are going backwards. So, what we can learn about this metaphysical universe can come to us by studying the physical one, because if you accept this fractal patterns, this holographic patterns of life, as above, so below, it's the things you see, how space and planets behave, how electrons behave, the branches of a tree to the branches within our lungs. The mycelium roots under the tree system, under the forest, is the nervous system of the forest. It looks identical to our nervous system. Then you can start to see that we are in fact light. We are in fact holographic information processing systems nested at levels of vibration that has consciousness that moves up and down through this thing we call a body. One thing has to be true. Okay. that in order for something to manifest, it has to be expressed and written in a code or a language that every level of the human nervous system can comprehend and work on. This is the way we can begin to change this, understand this level of coding within the human system that works on all these levels is not English. It does not speak any verbalizations at all. Verbal language that we comprehend and use to communicate is and what communicates with our holographic fractal nervous system in our body is a language of sensations. And when I speak, I'm telling you that every sensation we subjectively or objectively process uh, also functions as kind of like a computer command. It tells our nervous system what to do and how to do it. But oftentimes we are not paying any attention at the level of this. Most of us aren't even conscious of this at the level. So, how does that relate to the idea of this? It relates to us through our proprioceptive nervous system. One of the things we need to understand is when we look at the human being before we learn to speak, and the foremost, the very first gestures we have, or the very first language that we had with the language of feeling, the language of kinesthetics, the language of sensation. Okay. We had this internal feeling and external sensations or external actions and behaviors. And one of these things you always see whenever a person is talking is people start describing or discussing their issues and what they're going to do tomorrow or their fantasy or some idea they have or their beliefs or their daydream. They're using their hands and they're almost simultaneously moving their hands to certain spatial locations in certain ways in front of them. This may look, like nothing. It may look like they're just talking with their hands, and we are paying close attention to their spoken verbal words they're saying and just kind of noticing their hands moving. But this is a real alphabet of the nervous system. This is a gestural alphabet, and it predates any spoken verbal words. It's part of your spatial memory, and that's the most developed part of you. Okay. If you want to know more about this, there's a book called Moonwalking with Einstein. Okay. By Josh Foer, Moonwalking with Einstein. And it goes into details about this mnemonic Olympics for these guys that get together and they found really powerful memory techniques to memorize. So memorize all kinds of significant amount of data. They could memorize 6 decks of playing cards in a row, and they do this in competitions, and they're quite fascinating. But one of the things they talk about is a technique called memory palace. What is the memory palace? Well, it's about tapping into your spatial memory to create a construction in your mind of a quote house, unquote, that you're intimately familiar with. Okay. And you want to go to your mind, you want to create this visualization of a house that's around you, and you create symbolic representations of information that you put somewhere in this house where you know how to find it. Anytime you need to go retrieve that information, you in your mind, in your imagination, in this perception house you created, you go into this house and you go to that particular room and you pull out a drawer or a dresser or you open a closet door or something and there's a shelf where you put this information and there it is. And it comes out and it comes easier. And it's sometimes it comes in such a way that it's shocking for people who usually do this because they just can't believe something like this is possible, but they notice it happens. How does this happen? How can you create a visualization of a house in your mind, like you're walking through it and you're wanting to put certain file cabinets in places in certain rooms to remember things? Well, it's because you're tapping into the type of memory that's the oldest part of us, our spatial location. In my book, From Pain to Purpose, a complete guide on healing PTSD, I instruct the reader how to use a process similar to this, tapping into the memories related to PTSD moments, overwhelming traumatic experiences that cause them to have panic attacks or anxiety or just something that is not useful in their life, something that they want to get rid of. And this book gives you the details. Okay. My book gives you the blueprints and the steps to actually speak this language of the nervous system to clear it out. It's almost like diminishing a room in that memory palace that you no longer want. So it works through this spatial location, part of your proprioceptive neurology. Okay. So whenever you think about the sixth sense, ESP, clarikinesthetic, which is what happens when you feel something happening, whenever you feel certain shifts taking place, or your gut feelings that are warning you of impending danger. Your gut feelings give you this little insight, not the voice in your head, but a sensation telling you that you should or shouldn't do something. I'm sure all of you have had some kind of experience to where you had an urge to do something, you ignored it, and you later regretted not doing it. That is your gut feelings speaking to you, and they are always correct. Your gut feelings are always accurate. I know I've had people sometimes tell me, but Dr. Gabe, I followed my gut feelings and it was wrong. No, you followed the voice in your head, and that was wrong. You followed the lying rational mind, which was so convincing at telling you what you should do, and it was completely wrong because it wasn't your gut feelings. Your heart sensations are another sixth sense, like ESP type thing. When somebody says, I felt it in my heart, they did. They felt something in their heart. Your heart has its own brain centers, its own nervous system. Okay. Clarikinesthetic is feeling, clairvoyance is seeing. Okay. I know of other people, a little more rare, but I know of people that are clairolfactory. They can smell something. They can smell when there's a sensational change going on. That is their nose picking up something. Uh, I know this is common. I've got a friend that's very strong Indian heritage, and his sixth sense for this is scary accurate. But he can smell certain things. Like he could smell a motorcycle when it's miles down the road. If there's a group of people that are on Harleys coming our way, he could smell that if you're in the vehicle. I'm not talking about smelling the fumes or something. He can just sense that through his nose. That's clairolfactory. These are all examples of how our body picks up on this um, non-physical world that we're all a part of that we've been conditioned to ignore. Another example, Jim Corbett, he wrote the book Manhunters of Kumal. He was a hunter recruited by the government to go into India and kill these man-eating tigers. In his book, he gives examples of how this sixth sense saved his life without saying it. He's a well uh, he's a well documented hunter. He's not somebody that studies ESP or probably even believes in it for that matter, but he wrote the hair on the back of his neck would stand up at certain moments and it would make him change the course of action knowing that some tiger was staring him down. So we all have this ability. Ever had the sensation of being stared at? Sure, you have. That's exactly what you're picking up. That's exactly what you are tapping into is this proprioceptive nervous system. Now, if we're talking about an organ or an organ system that would be responsible for this, again, we have our gut feelings. Our gut's a sensory mechanism. We have our heart, which has its own nervous system, but it would be our proprioceptive nervous system, which is what my book goes into details about. Our organ systems that manage this would be our proprioceptive nervous system. And it wouldn't just be a sixth sense, it'd be a sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, and perhaps even 11th sense. Because based on the information from the studies and the things that I shared with you today, and there's much more, there's at least 6 different channels of information that our proprioceptive neurology monitors and feeds through us through sensations, not the voice in our head. In fact, one of those is electromagnetic fields. That's a part of us there's a part of us that has this interoceptive, proprioceptive division of our nervous system that's monitoring spatial awareness outside of your body and it's monitoring the spatial sensations and movements within your body. In my book, I give an example of carrying a bucket of water in a bucket. Have you ever tried walking with a bucket of water? You see it starts splashing and moving everywhere. Well, human beings themselves are about 75% water. And if you try walking across a room with a bucket of water, you notice it sloshes. Well, why don't we slosh when we walk? Well, we do. Our organs squish and swash around every time we walk. But our proprioceptive nervous system, our autonomic nervous system, filters out close to about 90% of all of those sensations. So the information that's being processed is filtered out and we're not perceiving it. It's still there, it's still accessible. Okay. My book goes into the details of how to access this part of the nervous system that I'm describing. The way your neurology processes it is it through the language of sensation kinesthetic. Okay. What you feel, what you hear, what you see, what you smell, and what you taste. But there's other aspects, including the proprioceptive nervous system we talked about, your cardiac nervous system, which actually, if you study anything from the organization called Institute of Heart Math, they talk about the heart's own nervous system. And it's the heart. The human heart is the most powerful, rhythmic, energetic, vibrational source that radiates this electromagnetic field out anywhere from 3 to 8 feet outside the body. When you're within this 3 to 8 feet of another person, you can sense their emotions. It's all happened to us. We're in a kitchen minding our own business, maybe cutting up an apple, and we have a family member walk in behind us. We know somebody walked in the door, and we can instantly tell if they're in a fit of rage, if they're in a bad mood. Without seeing them with our eyes, we can sense that. Well, that's through this proprioceptive nervous system we have. Other studies that this Heart Math Institute has done that are really fascinating is they actually took a boy and they took a puppy and they put these electro-sensing probes all over them. So they put these sensoring devices all over the boy and all over the puppy, and they let them play together. And within 15 minutes, both of their hearts were completely synchronized, beating together. Now, this field is also emotional information that's emulating and being received by your by your proprioceptive nervous system, by your cardiac nervous system. And the third player in this is we're going to talk about is called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are the biological foundation for basically empathic communication, understanding somebody else and feeling someone's intentions. Okay. So we take all this information through these different channels and it replicates whatever information it's tapping into. For example, if you're very old, you know this saying that you and I are talking together and I'm hooked to an EKG and I'm watching you. And if you're hungry and you're peeling a banana, okay, and I'm watching you peel this banana and eat it, all the different parts of my nervous system that would activate if I were peeling a banana myself are firing and lighting up. They're active. Me watching a person take a drink of a water bottle, my brain goes active as if I'm taking a water bottle on its own. So what happens is everything your neurology is aware of, it's mirroring inside of you in order to understand it better and connect with it. That's why you want to be, that's why you don't want to sit here and be focusing on doom and gloom. You don't want to have resentment towards other people. You don't want to have hatred or resentment or guilt or any of that because it's going to be reflected back into you as kind of a mirror. So we've got these three different subdivisions. They all work together. They create a field of awareness that helps us navigate this vibrational world that we are all call our personal reality. And some of the things one of the very first things is whenever we have information in our nervous system is we become aware of it. Then our neurology starts to define a sequence to us. So when it first comes, then our nervous system kind of fires off all subconsciously to define what does that mean. Okay. And then there's a whole nother cascade of different filters, associations, connections, all made. And if we've been traumatized at some form, this is going to skew that and these pathways in our body and brain, and it's going to make us say, what's the meaning I get from this? What's the meaning I get from this? So it's not the things that we see that mess us up. It's the meaning that we describe through it after our nervous system is trying to make sense of it and is skewing through all these potential areas that have been skewed from trauma that makes us have the perceptions and the feelings that we do.